The Super Smash Bros. Community has had a new controversy arise, and it managed to pop into my Twitter feed, so I decided to take a look at what's currently going on. Shout out to my Patreon members like always, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can check out the link in the corner or the description below. With that being said, let's dig right into everything after a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. Do you ever get this feeling like someone is working behind the scenes to try and get your personal info to blackmail you with? No? Well, if you're like me, you do get that feeling and don't want that to happen, so to help curb that cloud of anxiety, I use NordVPN. It lets me change my IP address to one of 59 countries to choose from, and even lets me access region-locked content in my current country so that I can do my work in a much safer and accessible way. For any of you anime watchers out there, Netflix Japan has a massive catalog that is for sure worth checking out. Just get some food, scroll down to Japan on NordVPN, and have yourself the binge session of the decade. Are you at McDonald's and can't access a certain website because their Wi-Fi blocked it? Well, you don't gotta worry about that anymore, as with NordVPN, you can get right past that block and get back to whatever you were doing. It makes your life easier, and better yet, it's extremely affordable using my link at nordvpn.com/Lanza. You get a 2-year plan plus 4 extra months for free on top of that, and even a 30-day money-back guarantee. There is no losing, and if you try it out and figure VPNs just aren't your thing, well hey, at least you tried it out, and that's better than missing out entirely on a deal like this. Go ahead and check out my link below, and thank you NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. So in order to understand things easier, let's first go over the organizations and people involved in this giant debacle. First we have Nintendo, of course, the creators of Smash. Next are VGBC, Beyond the Summit, and Panda Global, which are esports organizations that run Smash events throughout the year. VGBC runs Smash World Tour, an international circuit that runs Smash tournaments. Beyond the Summit runs a broadcast for whichever tournament they are contracted with, and Panda Global runs Panda Cup, a North American circuit. VGBC is currently owned by brothers Gimr and Apostle. Ken Chen was the former executive director of Beyond the Summit, and Dr. Allen is the CEO of Panda Global. It's a lot of names and organizations, but it's best to name them now because the stuff that goes down between all these people is a lot to keep up with. On November 29th, 2022, VGBC announced they had to cancel their upcoming 2022 Smash World Tour Championship and 2023 World Tour entirely, saying that Nintendo themselves said they could no longer operate. They explained that in November 2021, after the Panda Cup was announced, Nintendo contacted them wanting to potentially license them like they did with Panda Global. They would go on to continue their talks with Nintendo from December to March 2022, but during this time, organizers were worried to work with them that year as Dr. Allen had allegedly been spreading rumors around that they were going to get shut down that year. They would speak with Nintendo about these rumors, and Nintendo would reaffirm that Panda has nothing to do with their judgment along with other reassurances, making them feel things are back on track, and said they even submitted a license application in January that year. VGBC would allege that Panda was still trying to sabotage them and that whatever Panda was saying was affecting their business, even if Nintendo was reassuring them that everything was alright. Nintendo would get back with them in March about the license application, but were unable to get a formal license in time. Instead of calling the circuit off, VGBC still went ahead and announced the 2022 tour as they had been running tours without official licensing before and had no issues then. They would say this caused their application to go into limbo, and after discussing more with Nintendo, they would recommend they apply for a single event license for their December 2022 championship in order to get things rolling once more. So, VGBC got into talks with Nintendo in November 2021 to get an official license from them, sent an application in January 2022, and after just 2 months of waiting for approval, they decided to go ahead and announce the tour without any license, despite talking with Nintendo. Despite the claims of Nintendo sending the application to limbo being debatable and down to speculation, the fact Nintendo still decided to work with them after announcing the tour without proper licensing while discussing with them shows they were willing to make things work even after VGBC kinda did them dirty by not waiting for Nintendo's approval to get the licensing. The next part gets into Panda Global and how they started to recruit events for their Panda Cup circuit. They allege that Allen was telling other organizers Smash World Tour would be shut down and that any events that would join them would not be allowed on Smash World Tour as well. Panda would go after events that weren't on Smash World Tour, but they found out a few of those events already had broadcast deals with Beyond the Summit, and so Allen would try to talk to Beyond the Summit to work out a deal between each other. Beyond the Summit had no reason to give up their broadcast rights for free, and they alleged that Allen started to escalate things quickly, saying that he threatened Beyond the Summit in their entire Smash operation if they didn't join him. Beyond the Summit didn't budge, Allen warned he'd get Nintendo directly involved, and most events with Beyond the Summit stood by them and didn't join Panda Cup after this. VGBC would still keep in touch with Nintendo about the upcoming championship and enter talks to submit an application that would possibly change the name of Smash World Tour, along with legal things they can't discuss because of NDAs, eventually sending in their proposal on April 9th, 2022, after help from Nintendo themselves. Back to Panda, they had to pursue events already with Smash World Tour to fill the slots, and eventually had to drop the exclusivity requirement, meaning that events could be both part of Smash World Tour and the Panda Cup now. They say events were issued Nintendo licenses very quickly and felt slighted by this as they had been told it wasn't possible before, and alludes to favoritism on their end. The Panda Cup was finally announced on May 26, 2022, and VGBC's communication with Nintendo would drastically slow down after this, though they did confirm they were aware of the application they sent in April with the intent to announce the championship in July. They wouldn't hear anything from Nintendo for months and announced the championship in August, and soon after Nintendo would finally respond saying they were busy and understood why they had to announce prematurely, with then getting back to talks in September. Nintendo would reassure nothing had been decided yet, they would talk about Alan and his alleged behavior, and Nintendo would try to get conversations about the licensing going once more. There's a lot of allegations thrown at Alan's way, such as him going to BTS themselves to force them into joining Panda Cup or else. These are very serious things to say about someone in an organization, and the fact there is no evidence and we're supposed to believe VGBC based purely off their word alone is concerning to me. I believe VGBC with their claims on Nintendo because if they lied about them at any point in this document, their entire careers would be in jeopardy, but to make claims on another party with no evidence is just plain weird to me. VGBC wouldn't get back with Nintendo until November, and that they still had some talks and decisions to go about before making any final say or judgment, and they should talk regularly to discuss the future once again. On November 23rd, Nintendo rep would deliver the news that from that point onwards, they expect Smash World Tour to only operate with a license, but that they would not be guaranteed one for the championship or 2023. They say they would try to get clarifications for how come, but Nintendo started to make general statements that didn't go anywhere, showing they weren't budging. They would then ask if they could run their championship in next year's tour without a license and try to get into talks for 2024, and Nintendo would say that those times are over, and that when asking Nintendo if they knew they were forced to cancel it would hurt the community, in which they replied yes. They then apologize for how things went on and are working to contact the proper sources to shut everything down, ending with a concluding segment that basically says they wish Nintendo would reconsider how they go about negotiating things. Now there's a lot of things to take from this. For example, they asked Nintendo if they could run without a license again and they said no, which is very unexpected given the past few years they've done just that without any repercussions. The stuff with Alan and Panda Global didn't really go anywhere past allegations against him, and so now people had questions as to what exactly he was up to and if he was really trying to take down Smash World Tour in order to get people to work with him and Nintendo, as he had an official license through them. Either way, more questions than answers came from this, and along with the allegations against Alan, the Smash community was up in arms against both him and Nintendo. The next day on November 30th, Nintendo would respond through Kotaku and say they couldn't come to an agreement with Smash World Tour, but that they did not request the changes or cancellation to the remaining events in 2022, including the championship, because of the negative impact it would have on the community. This was strange to hear as it was a complete contradiction of what Smash World Tour told everybody, and suddenly people were trying to figure out who exactly to trust. VGBC would respond a few hours later in a new document, basically just linking the first one we went over and copy and pasting the text from the email Nintendo sent them, which says they will not get a license for the 2022 championship and 2023 tour due to not having their health and safety guidelines up to standard. They then clarify they only applied for a license for the championship only, and again say their discussion with Nintendo gave off the implication they couldn't go any further with their tour. On December 1st, Nintendo would respond again, this time through IGN, stating their decision was based solely off their evaluation of unlicensed activities, notably saying that their partners need to meet a high standard for health and safety of their fans, hinting this was a major deciding factor to not give them official licensing. They say Panda Global had nothing to do with their decision, and go on to say that despite not licensing the 2022 championship and 2023 tour, they verbally told them they weren't requiring them to cancel the championship, and it was a decision solely made by Smash World Tour. They go on to say Panda Global will still be a key partner of theirs and gives the typical statement about how they care about the community and whatnot. I looked around for whatever these health and safety violations were for not giving them the license, and the only two things I could come up with were stuff with mask mandates and whatnot, and when YouTube technicals would sneak into the Double Down tournament that was being run under Smash World Tour after being banned with not a single piece of security to check people or bags or anything like that at all.
Successfully broke into the tournament. It was the easiest shit I've ever done. There's literally no security. If you look over there, not a single guard or anyone posted up.
Hell, an anonymous tournament organizer would even say this in an interview with DigDay, adding more credence to these claims. On December 2nd, Smash World Tour would respond in another document, again reiterating they felt Nintendo implied they couldn't run the championship in their verbal conversation together. They then start to go after Panda Global and try to paint the situation as Nintendo knowing that Panda was trying to purposefully sabotage them, saying that other people have said similar things despite not a single piece of evidence coming out that Panda was doing anything, but I digress. Panda Global would make the typical PR statement about being surprised with Smash World Tour's cancellation and how they never did anything to try and sabotage them, despite what the public was trying to pin on them, and point out they do regret a conversation between Alan and Beyond the Summit that wasn't up to their guidelines and apologize for how that went. 2 days later, on the 4th, Panda Global would drop Alan as their CEO immediately, and that the Panda Cup finale was postponed due to security concerns stemming from the controversy, again saying they still want to work with the community. Alan himself would post a message alluding to an upcoming statement, teasing that Smash World Tour has been lying and Beyond the Summit has been putting the community in jeopardy, and so people are now waiting for what's next. After going over this entire mess, there's some stuff that still doesn't make any sense to me. I also found it very strange how Smash World Tour was trying to paint Nintendo as collaborators in Panda Global's attempts to sabotage them, when again, there is zero evidence to any of those claims, and we're just supposed to believe that Panda was trying to fuck them over purely off their word and the word of others. What is the point of including Panda in any of these statements? If they expect people to listen to just their word alone, it sounds like they need to take a step back and really think about the way they run things, because an organization spreading rumors with nothing more than hearsay is not the way to run a business. It cost Alan his job, and now he was teasing for what's to come in the future, and frankly, after all this libel nonsense, I don't exactly blame him for taking the route of retaliation. On December 6th, Alan would drop a 31-page document going over everything from his point of view. He starts off saying how he first got into negotiations with Nintendo in 2018 to get the Panda Cup license, and how 3 months later he found out VGBC planned on starting the Smash World Tour. He says Nintendo caught wind of it before launching and that Smash World Tour leadership was told to wait for approval before launching it, but they did so anyway in 2020, knowing the potential trouble they would get into with Nintendo. He says VGBC knew having the name Smash was a bad move to make and still went ahead with it, and says that Smash World Tour leadership had known Nintendo was working with Panda to officially license them too. Alan goes on to say he believes that Smash World Tour leadership was indeed with talks with Nintendo on getting a license in the year 2022, but that these licenses take a lot of time, explaining it took 3 years for Panda Cup to get an official license from Nintendo, and that Smash World Tour should have been so surprised it was taking so long to get answers from Nintendo back. He goes on to talk about the cancellation itself, saying that Nintendo told him the same things they told the public that they never said to cancel the championship, and that they were surprised with how everything went down. He also mentions the hotel in San Antonio that the championship was to take place in apparently had nothing booked at all either from what he's seen on his side of things. He then questions why they even need a license to run things to begin with, as they've done so without one before multiple times, and then says if they felt Nintendo was giving mixed signals, why didn't they just clarify things with them before announcing the cancellation? It would have not caused the situation to happen, and things could have been solved in a much more professional way. Alan then goes on to tell people that Smash World Tour purposefully misconstrued him telling tournament organizers that they would most likely not get a license as an act of malice and sabotage, when it was actually him being truthful with the people he was talking to and giving them the proper information they needed before they made their decision. He reiterates this once more, uses a screenshot from a conversation he had with the tournament organizer back in April that he was not trying to sabotage them, and explains he defended VGBC to Nintendo multiple times when speaking with them. Alan goes on to say how when he heard the rumors VGBC was spreading about him, he looked at them and said he had no ill will towards any of them, and that he just wanted to work with them one day for the future of the community. He talks about how the exclusivity that Panda Cup events seemed to have was because Nintendo couldn't license events on an unlicensed circuit, but that he was able to get this rule lifted 6 weeks into negotiations, which led to the multiple licensing situation that Smash World Tour felt slighted by. He then talks about how they encouraged people to go to Smash World Tour because it wasn't about competing with one another, but just to help support the community and create goodwill with everyone. He then goes on to say he knows the biggest risk to Panda Cup would be if Smash World Tour got shut down by Nintendo, because part of the blowback will come onto them as they have a good relationship with Nintendo, so for Smash World Tour to say he wanted them out of the picture didn't make any sense to him, as it would negatively affect Panda by proxy. Alan questions why Smash Tour dragged Panda and him into their mess with Nintendo and says it was nothing more than hearsay and speculation being the reason why, and if they truly believe he had anything to do with their license being denied or not, before exclaiming that Smash Tour had much to gain by ruining Panda's reputation in the original statement they wrote. He sends a message to VGBC and the parties involved themselves, saying they did all this damage to him and Panda Global despite them not having anything to do with Nintendo not giving them a license, and that they don't deserve any of the power they hold in the community. Now this is just the first part of the statement, and we already have a lot to go over. I don't think that it took him 3 years to get officially licensed is important, because it shows that the original statement Smash Tour put out about how it took so long to talk with Nintendo on getting theirs in a year was nothing, and it was just them being impatient with Nintendo instead. Nintendo coming to them and telling them to wait for their approval to announce Smash Tour and still announcing it anyways was also interesting to hear, as it shows VGBC had only themselves in mind when it came down to it, and by proxy shows a clear lack of respect for Nintendo and their wishes. Asking why they wanted a license from Nintendo, that didn't make much sense at all, because it was Nintendo that went to them first, and it would be dumb of them to turn them down for whatever reason they might have had. The antagonizing statements at the end don't help either, it just comes off as extremely petty. As far as VGBC dragging Panda into the mess, it makes perfect sense for Alan to be upset about this, because there's not a single piece of evidence that shows he was acting in bad faith when telling tournament organizers about Smash Tour's likelihood of getting a license. Sure, Alan telling people that might hurt VGBC in their business, but he's not lying or trying to sabotage them. He's being a good and honest businessman with his clients about the options they have on the table. Seeing VGBC trying to purposefully misconstrue this as someone trying to take them down maliciously with no evidence shows a lack of maturity on their part, and if they felt Alan was truly trying to sabotage them, they could have messaged him themselves to try and work everything out and clarify things. What's interesting is that a lack of clarifying things with Nintendo is what led them to canceling Smash Tour, so to see they never reached out to clarify these rumors with Alan isn't exactly surprising, and shows a pattern of this particular type of inaction. The next part goes into Alan's experience with Beyond the Summit, and more specifically, the former executive director Ken Chen. Alan explains that when he first hit up tournament organizers to join the Panda Cup circuit, a lot of them had already made arrangements with Beyond the Summit to be the broadcasters, whereas Alan had a plan to get all the broadcasting through Panda Global's network, and so he decided to hit up Beyond the Summit himself to see if he could work out a deal between them. He first shows an email with the tournament organizer explaining they were Beyond the Summit, proving he wasn't lying about his intentions to go speak with them. Alan then gets into his first call with Ken, in which he gives out a bunch of plans for how the streaming would work if they worked together, ranging from joint stream channels to a side stream channel that gives Beyond the Summit all the money. Alan claims that Ken wasn't having any of it, and says that Ken got a bit combative when speaking with him, but he didn't want to give up on a deal that could benefit the both of them, even speaking with Nintendo themselves on ideas before he had a second call with Ken. Alan then drops a screenshot of proof showing that he was telling Ken about how he talked with Nintendo about the idea, but that broadcasting rights were a gray area for them, and that he sent Nintendo his contact info so they could potentially discuss the issue further were they to join it with Panda Global. Ken replies, and Alan asks for a bit more info that could be useful before the screenshot ends. Alan points out that nowhere in this message was him trying to escalate anything, that he was just trying to help Ken stay up to date with his side of things involving Nintendo. The second call happens, new ideas are said, Alan says Ken gets angry once more, and to sum it all up, Ken basically doesn't budge no matter what ideas Alan proposed to him. Alan would also talk about a legal issue that was brewing and would affect the major events in the Smash community, and says that when Ken was made aware of this, he didn't care and was embracing the idea of the issue getting worse, whereas if they worked together they could stop it from escalating. Ken would then reveal he wasn't working with his ideas because Beyond the Summit already sold Papa John's sponsorships throughout their 2022 streams, and was afraid the ideas Alan put forward would impact the sponsor deal. Alan would thank him for his time despite the hostile interactions and then move on from there. After that second call, Alan would brainstorm ideas Ken might like, and eventually came up with the most perfect idea for Beyond the Summit and Panda Global. This idea would stop the legal issue from escalating by stepping around it, and the new version was easy to fit into the Smash ecosystem. Alan hits up Ken in late March to propose this new idea, and Ken never responds to him back, with Alan showing the DMs of him trying to contact him. He even hits up another Beyond the Summit member Mikey in August to see if they'd like to have Beyond the Summit main stage join the Panda Cup circuit, and again, nothing is heard back. He then says they did end up working with Beyond the Summit throughout the year, at one point completing the Papa John sponsorship deliverables when they were in charge of the broadcast during a particular Panda Cup event, showing that they were working with them. Alan would then apologize to the organization except for Ken, and that he had no malice or ill intentions at all, and was just trying to figure out a deal to work between the two of them. He then claims Beyond the Summit has a lot to gain from Panda's downfall, as they lost their Dota contract and had to rely on Smash more, and due to events that would normally broadcast through Beyond the Summit joining Panda as their deal was better than Beyond the Summit's, It made sense for them to financially take out their competitor and regain their lost customers. Alan then says despite hearing Ken talking shit about him to get tournament organizers to turn on him, despite finding out that Beyond the Summit threatened to pull the Papa John sponsor from events that worked with Panda, he decided to still work with them because he believed their contribution to the scene was worth it, but in the end they took out his career instead. He then says Ken is getting people to break NDAs with Panda for what seems to be no reason other than malice, along with an email going over that from a lawyer explaining the entire NDA stuff. He then shows tweets of Ken supposedly throwing shade at Panda without outright naming them, and then he states he believes not all the staff are malicious, and that their misconceptions most likely stem from his interaction with Ken, and Ken purposefully misconstruing them in a malicious manner. We have a lot to dig through here once again, so let's get to it. Alan's reason for contacting Beyond the Summit falls in line with what Smashworld Tour said. He had events that already tied up with their broadcasting, and Alan wanted to try and work out a deal where they could work together. The legal issue doesn't really add to the document at all, as what's the point in saying Ken was putting the community at risk if people can't even learn what's at risk to begin with? Claiming that Beyond the Summit wanted to take out Panda was also very reckless, as it's purely speculation, and it comes off as Alan wanting to poison the well because Ken did so first as he was talking shit about him. As far as the vocal conversations went, there's no real way to believe either side as there's no evidence of what exactly went down, but what makes me believe Alan wasn't acting in bad faith was that he showed messages where he was clearly trying to talk to Ken about the other version of the deal he wrote up, and Ken just leaves them in the dust. I get if Ken didn't like Alan anymore after their conversations, but it's Ken's responsibility to reply to Alan with a stern message saying he doesn't want to work with him at all, no matter how good the deal is. I find it hard to believe that Alan kept pushing if he was told this, because if he heard this in the call, he would have even bothered coming up with the other version and trying to message him. It makes no sense, it would be a waste of time. It seems that their interactions on call led to a very volatile environment, and in turn caused both of them to skew whatever they were saying to each other in the worst possible light. The next part goes over the claims of Alan strong-arming people to work with him, and he claims that people might have felt this way because of his excitement for getting something he'd been working on for 4 years finally off the ground and being too overzealous. He calmed things down a couple weeks into everything, and made sure to keep promises he made to show he's a man of his word to the tournament organizers he was working with. He goes on to say that the talks he had were nothing but positive, that he had other workers at Panda Global help him when it came to any clarifications he needed to make, and that the tournament organizers he was working with never showed any negative reaction to how he was going about everything. Alan then goes on to say to any tournament organizers that he spoke with if they had any issue with how he was going about things to tell him themselves so he can learn from that to become better at what he does, and then goes on to show a multitude of screenshots from those he was speaking with and how none of them showed any negative reaction to his business talks. The first would be with Shy, the tournament organizer of the Shine tournament, showing a very clear conversation of Shy not wanting to participate in Panda Cup, Alan asking for feedback as to why not, dropping follow-up messages within about a week time span to show he's not pestering them, and Shy coming back explaining the reason was because he and others felt the circuit was too new and experimental for their taste and wanted to play it safe, with Alan understanding their decision and feedback. He also shows another email to show he was okay if they didn't decide to join, showing that he wasn't trying to strong-arm them. The next would be Aaron, the tournament organizer of Riptide, and Alan showing the available options for him if he chooses to join the Panda Cup, along with talks about the money involving the casters and how that process would go, basically just going back and forth together. Aaron would message back a month later saying he got busy with more important matters, express his uneasiness after an unknown party made it seem like if they didn't join Panda Cup that year they wouldn't be considered for 2023, and that things had kept changing so majorly in just a few short months it made it hard to decide. Alan would reply that he wasn't aware he was focusing on the other event, but that there were no hard feelings, and that if he had any other questions to reach out to him directly and not listen to any rumors, with Aaron replying positively to his statement. The next would be a conversation with the tournament organizer of Collision, which shows them conversing together and potentially working for the Panda Cup 2023. They eventually speak together at the Big House tournament in person, and Alan sends his proposal. The organizer says he'll be forwarding it to his team. They set up a conference with each other, and the organizer messages a month later about contract stuff a day before Alan had all this drama happen, with the whole conversation not having anything malicious or strong-arming about it at all. Next is an email thread he sent to tournament organizers of Genesis, Sheridan, and Boba CK, basically of that package he worked up while speaking with Nintendo Beyond the Summit. It's nothing exactly interesting. It shows that Alan originally thought he had Beyond the Summit locked up with the minor package, but then it turned out that they were only interested but never locked in, showing that he's doing his due diligence and keeping his client up to date. Next is an email to another Riptide organizer about how if they don't want to opt in, that's completely fine, that he just wants feedback as to why not so he can make a better offer for Panda Cup 2023. Alan even shows a message he sent to Panda Global staff members where he accepts that it's alright if events don't want to join, showing he respects their decisions. Alan talks about people saying he's trying to monopolize license agreements, and refutes by naming the other 4 officially licensed tournaments out there that weren't part of Panda Cup. He then disproves rumors of people saying he was trying to keep tournament organizers from contacting Nintendo, showing him directly helping some of them get into contact with Nintendo. He even shows an email he sent straight to Nintendo, keeping them up to date with the negotiations he was currently in, giving updates on the latest info for those who were all in and those who were still on the fence. Alan says that the deals he was giving most events were extremely good in their favor, and that he wasn't trying to fuck them over unlike what the public is currently trying to say, and that there would be no point in him to threaten people to take a deal that was already good. He then says he told many tournament organizers that he doesn't want the full pie, he just wants everyone to get a good deal overall, before reiterating again that he didn't threaten or strong arm anybody into joining Panda Cup, and the people spreading that around is based on a misunderstanding. So, this is pretty easy to go over. It clearly shows multiple points where Alan is conversing with tournament organizers about joining Panda Cup, and at no point was he forcing them or strong arming them or anything like that. Now one can say that Alan's just choosing the best stuff to defend himself, which makes perfect sense, but my rebuttal to that is that we would have seen screenshots on Twitter of tournament organizers having a bad time with him and trying to show that he was forcing them into deals or treating them badly by the time this video came out, and we haven't seen any of that yet. This just further shows that Alan was acting out of good faith in what people are trying to say. The next part would be Alan going on to defend Nintendo and how they support events in their own ways despite the Smash community always holding animosity towards them. He states it's hard to work with Nintendo because they have high standards, and says Panda Cup was made to help simplify the process so events could get licenses much easier with or without Panda's help. He goes on to explain that other competitive games have publisher regulations because that's the reality of the business if they want to grow into a sustainable major commercial activity. Smash doesn't have that sustainability, and some people worry if they work with Nintendo closer they could lose their community identity, so Panda Cup was designed to take that burden so other organizations can be more free with how things go, and in doing so make more money and grow in a sustainable way while making a necessary sacrifice in doing so. He goes on to say Nintendo never said no to a sponsor opportunity for Panda Cup, and that the sponsors wouldn't have decided to join were it not for Nintendo's close involvement, showing that Nintendo helping is indeed working in a positive way. He then says the Panda Cup finale had to be postponed due to threats against their event, and it was all because of the lies that Smash Tour and Beyond the Summit decided to spread around. The document concludes with Alan going over how he started in this community back in 2007 and had been trying for the past 9 years to make a company that could support the community surrounding it and not for selfish reasons because he cared so much for it and what it means to him. He gives a quick TLDR for those who scrolled all the way down, states how he gave up 9 years of his life because he wanted to help the community out and the money wasn't the reason he did all this, and gives his final few paragraphs of how the community turned on him over lies being spread around and that it's time for him to move on, wishing luck on those in the community who wish to keep things moving forward. Now that we've gone through this document piece by piece, you guys can see that Alan wasn't acting in bad faith when negotiating, and was in fact acting professional with the tournament organizers he was talking to. It's why his document is much more believable. He has evidence to back himself up, and in turn that makes his word more credible than people who have none at all. That's not to say there wasn't a couple of bad things though, like a lot of speculation and animosity that didn't add anything of importance, and the ending going on about how the Panda Cup was supposed to take the brunt of Nintendo's strictness when explaining why it was made. Setting up Panda Global as an arbiter was really weird and gave off a very entitled and projecting tone to people, like he was just working for the betterment of the entire community. Well, let's be real, businessmen have their interests in mind first and foremost, so trying to set that up felt at best desperate and at worst disingenuous. Trying to attack everybody else was weird too. Like, I understand they all really hate each other, but it just comes off as assholish and frankly pointless to add, because it doesn't accomplish anything and it's just filler words from an emotional outing. Using retellings of his own side of events is also worthless, because it's just another way to show your opinion on how things went down. It's not evidence, it's just hearsay in screenshot form. The baseless attacks in general weren't very good, because I understand he's pissed these people basically just said a bunch of rumors about him, but it doesn't really help his case to attack people back, because it muddies the document, and given a lot of people were already shitting on him, they're only gonna focus on those attacks rather than the actual evidence. With that being said, I can't necessarily blame his hostile tone towards everybody else given all the libel statements they've been spreading about him without any proof, causing him to lose his dream career, and when we see he's acting in good faith with people outside of them, it only makes the Smash Tour and Beyond the Summit stuff look like misunderstandings that blew up in a very negative way. Needless to say, this document wasn't just a write-off to ignore like some people were trying to do. It definitely gave a lot of insight on Alan's experience and evidence of him acting in good faith throughout his business talks. After Alan's doc dropped, Smashworld Tour responded to it, not saying much but providing 2 screenshots. One showed that they indeed had the plan in motion to run the tournament in San Antonio, and another of the written statement that Nintendo sent them instead of just a copy and paste like before. Someone named Mikey was showed that he was in the first call between Ken and Alan, showing it took place on March 11, 2022. He explains it as if Alan was implying he had everything for sure going his way and all the tournament organizers would join him, and that Nintendo required streams to be on the Panda Cup channel so they could have more control of the content. They pushed against that idea because they already had contracts with the events, and anything short of a buyout would directly damage them. 3 days later, Alan would message them saying that Nintendo wanted to talk about the legality of the tournament broadcast on their channel. Ken himself will leak those messages in his own Twitter thread, in which he says that Alan was threatening the Smash community by bringing up the issue with Nintendo. Now when I read this, I had to do a double take because Ken is trying to say these messages are Alan threatening him in the Smash community. These are messages of Alan keeping Ken up to date with what Nintendo thinks and don't come off as Alan threatening anybody. That first call must have gone extremely bad if Ken came to the worst possible conclusion seeing these messages, but we'll never know what exactly happened in that call, so that's all up to speculation. Either way, Ken already disliked Alan by this point and took everything he said in the worst way possible, or he's actively trying to paint these DMs in a malicious light. I'm led to believe he's malicious because he then shows a DM between him and LD, the co-founder of Beyond the Summit, in which he says Alan sounds desperate and is trying to bully TOs into joining Panda. Ken agrees, and then LD deadass says their plan is to do a massive PR response to aim the community directly at Panda and Nintendo if things became public, all based off their version of events in the first sentence. LD here was told Ken's version of events and based his assumption off that, and given how Ken seems to overreact as seen by him thinking Alan was threatening him, it's safe to say Ken was exaggerating things to LD either emotionally or maliciously. When I first thought about any potential reasons as to why Ken kept speaking with Alan even after he disliked him, it suddenly popped into my head. Ken kept speaking to Alan because of the broadcasting issue, and once that was fixed in their second call, he ghosted him. It makes perfect sense. You hate the guy, but you feel your company is at risk, so you keep talking until it's fixed and then ghost him. So at best, Ken was curbing his contempt towards Alan in order to fix the issue, and at worst he was looking for anything to use against Alan in the future, given he already planned to fuck him over based off his messages with LD. On top of this, other Smash figureheads are trying to back up Ken, saying they trust him and vouch for him. We have LD of course retweeting Ken's thread and messages backing up the guy 100%, you know, despite being the guy who originally started to plot against Alan with Ken, but I digress. Boba CK over here is saying the most childish stuff imaginable to random people, someone who as far as I can tell also ghosted Alan based on that email he showed earlier, that Alan is the bad guy and Ken is the good guy. All these trust me bro statements against Alan and defending Ken are frankly worthless, and so far there is zero evidence that Alan was acting in bad faith. If people vouching for Ken saying how he's such a good guy is considered evidence in this community, that's very concerning and people should really get that act together. It makes me start to question the original document by Smashworld Tour as well. Like, why exactly did they talk about Alan and Panda Global without any evidence? It's not a very smart business move to spread rumors around at that caliber, and seeing how malicious everything seems to be, I start to wonder if this was perhaps out of malicious intent rather than immaturity. Again, VGBC could have brought up their issues with Alan to the man himself and they chose not to, and instead brought up these rumors to the public to attack his career. These are theories and questions that won't probably ever have any answers, but I want to give you guys a couple of thinking points because it's just so interesting to see how this entire Panda Global situation seems to be built off of hearsay and misinterpretations. After going over this clusterfuck of information, I think it's best if I give my point of view on how things got so out of hand as we end things off. After Panda Cup got licensed by Nintendo, Dr. Alan started going around to different events to try and get them to join his circuit, getting overzealous in the process, as seen by these long-winded messages to tournament organizers during all this. Some of the organizers had no issues, while others saw this as strong-arming and annoying, and along with Alan telling them things like how he believes Smashworld Tour was going to get cancelled that year because of their licensing issues, some felt he was actively undermining the Smash community in the process, but never told him directly and kept that opinion to themselves. Alan would go to Ken to try and work out a broadcasting deal with him so events under contract beyond the summit can participate in Panda Cup. Their first call goes badly, and 3 days later Alan tells Ken that Nintendo has issues with their broadcasting rights, which Ken takes as Alan, Nintendo, or both threatening his entire organization. Ken keeps in touch with Alan because of this, and during the second call they figure out the broadcasting issues and proceed to get back into talks. Ken, not wanting to deal with Alan anymore now that Beyond the Summit is saved, ghosts him, and Alan, not knowing Ken doesn't want to interact with him anymore because he never told him, tries to form a new deal and sends messages Ken's way, not knowing Ken already wrote him off. Everything after this is purely speculation that leads up to the Smash World Tour document. For example, one can argue that Ken might have been going around talking shit about Alan because he and El Dio had put a plan together to ruin Alan and Panda Global if their viewpoint of him came out to the public, that being he was bullying people to join him. It's not exactly unbelievable either, as all the people jumping on Ken's side to corroborate and back him up shows he has much deeper connections with influential figures in the community than Alan, and makes me wonder if Ken was behind all this madness. Was Ken going around convincing people that Alan is a bad actor based off his personal experience with him? Very possible. And what adds to this is that people can take those messages he leaked in both ways, and to see him try and paint them as Alan being malicious, ironically enough, makes me feel he's the malicious one. Because when you have to tell people to take a set of events from your own viewpoint, it shows to me an attempt to control the narrative, when realistically said narrative can go either way. As far as Smash World Tour goes, I understand why they made their decision to cancel based off that Nintendo email, because it's always best to make a decision off written word than verbal. I just don't understand why they didn't try to clarify with Nintendo further, as they've admitted to being confused with the mixed signals, but they still made the right business move. As far as dragging Alan and Panda Global's name in the mud with no evidence and nothing but hearsay backing them up, that's just straight up reckless and dare I say malicious. It's indefensible and they shouldn't have done so, and it only leaves me asking more questions on what exactly the goal was spreading that rumor around on such a massive scale. Something I just can't shake when thinking about VGBC is how they got to their current spot now. Now that Panda Global is most likely gone, VGBC is the sole major organization running Smash circuits and events. Like sure, there's Beyond the Summit that runs a couple of their own things, but now it seems that VGBC is the big name, and that leaves me with a really weird taste in my mouth, because what exactly led them to this position? Bringing up baseless rumors against Panda Global and their CEO in their original document. I realize this point is very speculative, but I can't not tell you guys how this feels so shady to me, like there's almost something more going on here. It's just so weird to think about, and it makes me wonder if them bringing up those accusations with no evidence to the public had more going on than just recklessness from emotional owners. It's clear Dr. Allen had a plan to take Smash to the next level and into the mainstream, and to be honest, it was working for a little bit. The issue is, the Smash community does not like Nintendo after past experience of them fucking them over, like with EVO 2013 where Nintendo was trying to shut down the Melee tournament for no reason at all. I believe that this situation is a massive combination of the Smash scene wanting to stay grassroots, a lack of trust in Nintendo, and an overall dislike of Dr. Allen and misinterpreting his business talks in a malicious way. Allen wanted to grow the scene, and the scene wanted to stay the same, and unfortunately Allen couldn't understand that, as from his point of view people joining him and growing with the help of Nintendo was the right move to make, whereas to others it was the wrong move. Put it simply, Allen got tunnel visioned in his head. I just find it concerning and disappointing that influential members of the Smash community are trying their hardest to paint him as some evil megalomaniac, when the actual evidence shows he was just very annoying with business talks at worst. This whole situation seems to be extremely overblown, and whether the reason is a lack of maturity from the Smash community or something else, I just want y'all to think a little deeper and come to a more rational conclusion, and not choose sides based on the popular opinion or because you like this person over that person. The nepotistic vouching from influential figures concerns me quite a bit though, as the Smash community seems to have a history of using people's word and nothing more to expel or exonerate members of the community, but that's a topic for another time. Until then, I hope things can be clarified in the future, because I want the truth as to what exactly is going on and just who exactly the bad guys are around here.